calling the meeting to order, and we are about to be led by our distinguished council president of the work session.
Joined by Councilmember Kumar.
Councilmember Kumar is here, thank you, and our distinguished town attorney.
As we are getting started, can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you.
Great, thank you.
Did you have any disclaimers?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yes, actually. I should have. Yes, Mr. Town Manager, could you please?
Sure, yes. So as everybody heard, this meeting is being recorded, so thank you for this available for folks to watch at a later time if they want. Ask that participants speak one at a time. If there's a public comment that anybody speaking, please state their name for the record. We ask that participants who are not speaking, not active in the participation, please turn off your video so that the recording better captures the discussion. If for whatever reason we get interrupted and are unable to continue on, I'll end the meeting and just log in via Constant Contact, and we can reconvene and continue on our meeting uninterrupted. And otherwise, I will turn it back over to you.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
so we have a lot of items to cover this evening, but I think most of them are fairly straightforward. You know, of course, the discussions on the others. The first item is pretty straightforward, I think, is scheduling to shift the July meeting. Can you summarize that, Matt?
Sure, the mayor pointed out that the first Monday of the month in July is July 3rd, so the July 4th holiday is the next day. People might be traveling, so wanted to just raise the topic of whether or not we wanted to reschedule for July 5th or for that next Monday instead.
It's a great idea. But I think we should go to probably because I think people that go away might take the week. So I think we should be respectful of that if we can.
And there are no other conflicts on July 10th? Does Monday, July 10th look okay to folks?
I mean, the full committee meets on that.
Yeah, that's no. I think I'll be happy.
So we'll put it on the agenda. If that's what you said, right?
Yeah, okay, right.
So you say July 10th, right?
Yeah. Budget, we need to hold special budget work sessions. That's what we did. The previous year has been very successful. We have to allocate extra time to do that. You know, let's just ask a lot of questions or dig into detail line by line. So we're looking at the schedule to lay this out. Again, Matt, can you just work us through?
Yeah, so I met briefly with the budget committee chair this past week, and we kind of reverse engineered when the budget needs to be adopted and introduced and kind of figured out our schedule from there. As the council president had said, in previous years, we held at least 2 full council work sessions to go over the budget line by line, especially focusing on some of the big ticket items in the budget, so that prior to the introduction, which has to happen in April, the council's had a chance to discuss and go over the entire budget so that when it's introduced, it's more pro forma and most of the discussion has already taken place. So what we usually do is starting in February, the mayor and I will work on getting a draft budget together, meeting with the budget committee and liaisons to that committee. And then submitting a full draft budget to the council in early March so that the council can, over the course of March, have a couple of standalone budget work sessions. And so I included a short timeline for you in the document here. The idea would be our March council meeting is on March 6th, so Monday, March 6th. Then March 8th, I would deliver a draft budget to you all after having met with the budget committee. And then the next couple of weeks, the council would meet in 2 budget work sessions. And so what was suggested was Monday, March 13th, and Chair Bolton also suggested Monday, March 20th. The only complicating factor there is that's the original date we had for our regular March work session. So if we did want to accommodate that, then we might need to rejigger our schedule a little bit.
We previously had held these in the table, right?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we had done is one evening one and then one daytime one.
Remember, this is just for the council, it's not, this is for the council working with the budget. So it's something that you can decide tonight, you don't have to, you know. It's just- So it's basically to find out if everybody can. And I don't know if you asked Ann at daytime. But it's up to everybody, I mean, you have. Right.
Do you want us, are you advocating for a daytime meeting?
No, I was just saying this was what we did in the past, so just querying that, that's all.
And I can more easily make the commit to the evening meetings. How about?
I could do it.
Do it early, 5:30, same time for work session.
Do you have a preference, Kabir? Daytime or early evening?
For these budget special sessions,
Yes.
I think early evening works well for me, similar to this start time for the work session we have now. But I recommend we definitely do 2 because I think it really served us well last year.
Absolutely. So we'll put these on our calendar, please, Matt. And then we'll have to discuss when we get closer what to do about our normal March work session.
Well, why don't you discuss that? Why don't you discuss that tonight? I mean, I think you should discuss that tonight.
I was hoping that if we have a light agenda, maybe we don't need to have a 3rd work session in March. But I think it's hard to predict what's going to be happening in the town.
Why don't you, this is what I would suggest, why don't you substitute the work session, the budget for the work session. So you meet on the 13th at 5:30 and the 20th at 5:30 as you already have in your schedule. And then if there's anything urgent for a work session, maybe we would add a half an hour to But it might also be that because the staff will do such an incredible job, and because all of you will ask all your questions on the 13th, that the budget here work session will end early.
I'm sure this will happen.
And so that's something that will happen. If you all do your homework in advance and ask questions to Matt before the 13th, you might do it in one meeting.
I guess, right, so I think. Well, I don't think it'll be one meeting, but if we have some time.
Yeah.
At the end of the second meeting that we could use, we could extend the second meeting. Or if folks want, we could pencil in a meeting on the last Monday of March, March 27th. If we don't need it, we don't use it, so we have it reserved. Does that make sense?
I can't, we have spring break that week, and we're gonna be out, so.
Okay.
But you can't do the 13th.
The
No, it's
27th.
27th.
Okay.
Steve, why don't we, for now, why don't we go with the first part of your idea? Just on the 20th, we have a slightly longer session. We pencil in and added 45 minutes for other council business.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Greg.
Okay, so you decided 5:30 to 7:30 on the 13th and 5:30 to whenever on the 20th.
To 8:15. 5:30 to 8:15.
That makes sense.
Which one?
Really, 5:30 to 8:15?
That'd be 1.5 plus 45.
Yeah, we can maybe make it faster.
That's just
Okay.
the reserve.
All right.
I know you can do it.
Yeah, we can make it faster,
If we work together. Okay.
although this part is going along, so.
So there's now the single-use plastic. I don't know if Matt, you want to give an update here as on how we gave feedback?
Yes, so I think at the last meeting, the general consensus was maybe our first crack at this was a little bit beyond the scope of what was initially intended by the Environment Committee. So I included one just sort of background on this, and two new draft resolutions that the town attorney has put together. One pertaining only to the single-use plastic, and then the other was also incorporating the composting element, which was part of the initial requests of the Environment Committee. So that either decide to just do it all at once or tackle them.
And both versions include Council President Circo's edits.
Thank you, yes, thank you for that.
And Robin, please correct me or clarify the Environment Committee's position, but from my understanding of what Bart was looking for from the beginning was really the town setting an example, the town providing leadership on these environmental policies. So the intent was not for the town to ban the use of plastic at town events. The intent was for the town council or for the town staff not to purchase single-use plastic for these events. But residents can bring what they want to the meetings. I think so Ron has modified the language accordingly to that vision. The composting, from my standpoint, I think composting is great there. I don't think we need to introduce it as a separate piece of policy. Really, there's nothing that stops the Environment Committee from just setting up a compost bin and us making an announcement. I don't think we need to make that a town policy because it doesn't change really anything, but for plastic does, because we're setting a policy that town staff will not purchase single-use plastic.
I have a question about the composting. I'm a crazy composter myself, but I wonder if this is the the staff.
I'm not a crazy composter, not because I don't see value in it, but because unfortunately it's not offered in my apartment building, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. My understanding is that it's relatively easy, and we would just put it out once a week like the trash or recycling.
Yeah, but what I envisioned is like, say, your July 4th event, all right? You'd have a couple of compost bins with lids on them, unfortunately, the compost bins, because you don't want animals. We get it. At the end of the event, you take them in to the garage, and then on compost day, you just bring them in, that's it.
And this is, we're not gonna do this at the pool.
I think they're composting the pool already, aren't they? Thought they were.
I don't know that they are. You think they are?
Or if at the pool, it would only be for like the newcomers part.
Okay, because I think this would be tough to mandate at a swim meet. Doesn't mean we can't
I
have
feel
it.
like we're not,
Okay, doesn't mean that we should set the example by having a bin there and composting what we can.
They do, actually.
I'm aware. Yeah,
Oh,
I've seen it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you could also put that in policy, there should be a comment. I mean, that's a good question. Why isn't there a compost bin at the pool?
Although there may be one, but anyway, it is a good question. If there is one, good. If there isn't, maybe we should say that it could be.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
no, it's putting a compost bin there, that's the only thing.
No, I'm in favor of all that. I wanted to tread more gingerly into some of these things. So people, really embraced it instead of, we just-
I mean, you can add the compost bin at all town sites to this policy if you want, but that's something that the town manager can decide right now. He can put compost anywhere he wants. We have a because we have a contract.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a negligible impact on the budget because it would be the same budget wise, the impact would be the same as if somebody new in town decided to sign up for composting.
And by the way, do we have a trash container at the tennis courts, and we should probably have a compost bin there. Don't people eat there?
I mean,
Don't they? And don't they eat in the parkland too?
No.
Oh, no, I'm just asking.
you don't have to. My thought is.
We should have compost bins everywhere.
We should focus for now, it's a good idea, we've talked already, tennis courts, I don't think it's.
Right. I agree.
So.
I mean, especially since we're promoting composting,
Yeah.
shifts times and everything. Anyway, sorry,
every lot.
every block.
Steve and fellow members, given the discussion, I'm wondering if we can tighten the language a little bit in the draft. So there are 2 or 3 areas that I might suggest. One is, I think we should clearly define single-use plastic, perhaps in the preamble to the draft, if it's possible to do that. Ron, I see that it is somewhat defined in the parentheses. Maybe those are Steve's edits, but it would be good to have it very clearly defined, given also the points made last time that there are plastics that are indeed recyclable. So I think it would be good to define that. The second is we say, Steve, I heard Steve say we don't expect, for example, swim meets to kind of comply with this. I'm wondering what might be more sensible is to just exclude the committees from this resolution. So this is just everything conducted by town hall staff and everything conducted by this specific council group. And anything conducted by committees, I think will be hard because there could be all sorts of meetings that are taking place. And I think that, the swim team committee, for example, is a town committee. And so that might be a very clean line to draw, is to just not mention committees in this draft and just focus on town hall staff and the council. And from what I'm hearing, that should cover the intent of this resolution, which is for these 3-4 specific events, like 4th of July, newcomers party, council meetings. So that's the second suggestion I have. The third suggestion I have is to actually we could mention composting, but we could to mention it in a separate paragraph. So one is about the material, right? Like water bottles, paper plates that are meant to be of a certain kind. And then the other is composting activities that potentially covers all garbage. So if we could mention it, but maybe it needs to be called out separately, because you're not saying buy biodegradable and compost them. I think you're saying buy biodegradable and then do composting, because there could be other compostable waste generated from the event. So I'm wondering if that needs to be called out separately.
Great questions, and that's one reason why I was recommending that we just don't even talk about compost in this, because all of a sudden we have lots more discussion, lots more word editing. And this is not even a necessary document, right? We can just tell Matt from now on, do not buy plastic. And I think
I wonder about that. I wondered if we even need this, to be brutally honest.
The environment committee's asked for it creates a little bit of a leadership statement. It provides a rationale behind what we're doing. If they have a change in staff, they have a policy in place, so it's a reference. So I think it's worth doing, but my recommendation was keep it focused. And I think some voting comments were very good. I think that they're addressed, like resolved, reduce the use of non-biodegradable single-use plastics, e.g. utensils, plates, cups, and water bottles, and use biodegradable products instead. And we talk about specifically the towns of Somerset hereby adopts a policy to prohibit the use by the town government of single-use plastics. And then we specify the 3 events that we talked about. Council meetings, July 4th, and the Congress.
But I think I don't have it open in front of me, but don't we go on to then mention council, staff, and committees? So I was just suggesting, do we need committees in that? And I think the single-use plastic remains fuzzy in my mind, because what you just mentioned is all plastic in that parentheses. Like
Yes.
so it might be worth just being very clear what we mean by single use, because as I mentioned last time, there's recyclable plastic, there's all kinds of plastic. It would be good to be clear, especially if we are going to do this as a leadership statement. Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry to interrupt. So yeah, I could add a recital, whereas single-use plastic items are goods, packaging, and other things that are designed to be used only once and then discarded or recycled. So it's my understanding that even recyclable plastic is detrimental to the environment because it takes significant resources and energy to create them. Whereas the environmental impact does not result if you're using refillable bottles or.
It's both that it takes energy to create them and also that they are very frequently not recycled. In other words, that there is a poor market for soda water bottle plastic.
I have to say that seems like an extreme position. If there is recyclable plastic, why can't we use it? Why is that not a positive step in the right direction?
Products made of recycled.
I can't hear you very well, Rob. I'm really sorry. There's a weird echo around where you're speaking.
You cannot buy products made of recycled soda water bottles. You can buy products made of recycled plastic bags, grocery bags. You can make products made out of recycled newspaper bags. You can buy products made out of thick plastic juice jugs or milk jugs. So there are certain kinds of plastic that if they are recycled, yes, products are made out of them. But single-use plastic bags are a terrible problem in the environment, in fact, even though they can be recycled successfully. That's the point. That even though things can be recycled successfully, they're not, and they become a problem.
Well, I think we would, I'm struggling to wrap my mind around under what conditions would they be why something recyclable would still be an environmental problem if we have a system, however weak, of recycling them. So this might require, I would love to get an education on this. Because if I'm able to recycle something and there's a system for it, why isn't that a positive step for the environment?
Have you ever seen plastic bags blowing around? Okay.
No, you're not answering my question.
Yeah, I am.
If I can cut it, it's a very valid question. You're asking about what's the value of recycling difference from single-use recycling. I think we're making this more complicated than it is. We have a recommendation from the Environment Committee that the Environment Committee has determined would be assistful, would set a good standard for the town, provide leadership. We don't all have to agree with that. I think we understand what's written here, what's presented. I recommend we just move ahead.
I recollect that Mayor Slavin mentioned last time that it's up to this council to take the recommendation from committees and put them into action in a meaningful way that's in the best interest of the town. I'm not denying all of this. I'm just saying it is not clear. And if we can make it more clear, it will be a better resolution. And one aspect of that is recycling, which seems to have a ideological, from what I'm picking up from Robin, rather than a technical perspective. And I'm not 100% clear whether it's technical or ideological. So it'd be good to be clear about that. I think Ron's suggestion, frankly, Ron, thank you, that makes it a lot better. But if we can go in that direction to make it more better, that would be good. And I think my other suggestion was, if our intent is not to only remove this use from certain events and not other events, then I think the resolution needs to reflect that very clearly. I don't think we can leave it fuzzy and make it kind of an understanding between us. So right now, it does include all events at the pool that are organized by committees, and that would put the MCSL, the Montgomery County Swim League organized events, for example, at the school in violation of this resolution. So we would need to be very clear that these events are not included. To be clear, or to remove the committees from it, which might be a more elegant way.
I've been accused of being ideological, and Kabir, that is simply not the case. What I have said to you.
Sorry, could you repeat that? What's the case?
I have been accused of being ideological.
No, not you, the statements you made. Don't take anything personally, just the statement.
Statements have been accused of being ideological. If you go to the website, any website, and ask the website, are plastic bags a problem? You will find the answer is yes. They are a problem. Single-use plastic bags are a problem that is not ideological. Okay.
I agree. We don't use single-use plastic in my home, for example.
So
But we do watch for what is potentially recyclable plastic, and I have noticed all sorts of packaging that is recyclable. I'm simply asking a technical question. You see, you're misunderstanding me. This is not a pro-environment, anti-environment. We're all pro-environment. We want it to be better. I'm just trying to make the resolution more strong. That's it. And I think if we leave it undefined, fuzzy, it's already an improvement from the last conversation. Ron's contribution now made it stronger. We can make it tight and strong. I think that would be good. I think that if we have an intent that some events are not included, it needs to be in the resolution, because then that is the precision we will, it will then reflect the full intent of this council.
Right.
Those are my two recommendations to make this stronger. There's no debate that we must do this. I don't think we need to make statements. I think it's important, but we need to make it stronger so it's effective.
Thank you, Kabir. And Ron, for that, can you clarify what town events you, town staff, buy plastic or have in the past?
So
Off the top, so it would be our town council meetings when we meet in here. So that would entail not purchasing plastic water bottles, for example, which would be my judgment.
Stop doing already.
Which we've already stopped doing, so that was pretty easy. The 4th of July event is a big event, we do our community service day. For that, we do use little plastic baggies sometimes, so we would need to refigure what we do for there. Halloween is usually a resident volunteer run event. The newcomers event we put on with the newcomers committee as well. So I think that's maybe one of the complicating factors is we have a committee there that we want to encourage to not use.
But that's still a town.
But that's a town event, so this
Right.
committee working on, it. So I think it's appropriate meant to be committee. But the town person.
Yes, exactly. Then we started to do the equity inclusion movie night.
Great example.
So I think there, again, I think it mostly would be utensils and cups and refreshments mostly. And then
So, sorry, so the, are you talking about movies at the pool?
Movies at the.
they did the first of what I think they're planning to be multiple and regular events at the town hall to just do a movie that. And then the Christmas party, I guess.
And then we also do the brown bag lunch. What I would suggest, based on what I've heard from everybody, is that you only exempt the swim team meets right now, because it sounds like that's a problem for all of you. Because there's actually, sometimes we have events at the pool, such as the or maybe some other things. But it sounds like from what you're all saying, that you're fine with all town events, town sponsored events, except swim meets, which are technically town events.
But the town doesn't buy stuff for those events. I'm just trying to understand what the.
But I don't know if they do or not. I'm saying just exempt them now, so you run the copper.
I mean, I think that the town probably does by, like, there's probably a fund or, like that the swim team provides things each,
I think it's, so the thing is, remember, you're just talking about introducing this. So I think it's imperative that you introduce it, and then you can find out what impact it might have.
Yeah, I think.
But to spend a lot of time trying to come up with the final document, that's not the best use of your time.
Yeah, right, I think the full committee was going to look at this themselves. That was the last I heard of it. I don't know if it met since
They were
then.
concerned that there would be, they'd have to do things that they couldn't pull off. That they couldn't, they didn't know what the rules were gonna be, and they didn't want them put on
But
them.
the pool committee doesn't sponsor any events.
Or just that it's, it does have that end of the year party, that last, the,
Dogs, well.
not the dogs.
They-
no, the whole banquet.
The bank.
That's the swim team.
That's the swim.
That's not the pool committee.
You don't.
You're right, you're right.
No, well,
That's
I
not-
mean, indirectly.
That's why I say that the only issue right now is the swim team events. The pool committee doesn't, they don't sponsor any events. And the pool rules, which you have to approve. You don't deal with that right now, that's on the agenda right now.
So maybe explicitly.
This is for events.
Just make sure that there's no confusion.
Or like, I don't know, like the lifeguards and stuff, like if there's,
That's on, the way this is written, it's for event, it's for policy on the town purchasing items for town events, and that's not the lifeguard. That's something you can do at the pool. Now,
We could-
if I could pass way of magic one, I would ban everything at all times by anybody. But that's gonna be down the line.
I mean, I'm okay. I'm okay exempting swim team events. I'm hoping that they get the message at some point too, but I'm okay exempting them for just now.
I mean, what is the burden? You know, we're all, most everybody here is an environmentalist. What is the big burden if we ban and fine people? Nothing. Where everybody has the resources to be environmental.
Yeah.
We should be leaders.
Well, it's always important
I
for
feel
these
like-
initiatives. It's always important for these initiatives that I think it was Debbie or Shannon who mentioned that we want people to actually do it. It's the goal here is not to find people and make statements. Goal is to reduce the use of plastic. That is really the goal. And so we have to be smart about that. By sticking it in people's faces, we will not win. And so I think if the goal is to reduce it, then there's a way to thread the needle. My view is to flip it and to be very explicit the events we ban. And then I think we should, like the 4th of July, the newcomers, we list the specific events where this is not permitted. And then we say that, in a year's time, we will expand that list. And that will include other activities and start the dialogue in the town. That would be the way to go. And I think then we will hear the full set of views. I can tell you one piece of, I think the swim team events could comply down the road. I think their struggle right now, because my wife is on the committee and is involved in buying some of these things with various committee members, is that they have stuff already, I think Matt will say, stored at the pool right now. That is a lot of it, or some of it might be single-use plastic. What do they do with that? So I think that there'll be these kind of details that we can talk through and figure out what to do. But it might be wise to just sort of say, look, these 4 events, no. And then a year's time, we will come back to this list and we will add to it, or 2 years' time, or whatever it is. And we, get to the outcome we want rather than just making pronouncements and, we get to the outcome of reduced use.
I think you want to make it clear to everybody that this is not a ban on plastic at town events. So you're not banning on people bringing water bottles for 4th of July. This is a policy that is requiring that the town government doesn't buy anything for the event. But I mean, if you want to ban it, I'm all for that. But we're not. I'm for banning it. I'm ideological.
I'm for banning it too, at specific events. If
Fun to buy more trees for the town.
If Jamie Raskin shows up with a plastic bottle, we turn him around and say, sorry, sir, you cannot attend the 4th of July.
Throw it away and fine him. Yeah, fine him $20.
We fine him right there on the spot. That's right,
Put
Jeff.
it in a fund, environmental fund. Okay, pick up all the trash in the town.
All right. Great discussion, and I appreciate the input. I think we were able to fine tune the draft policy a bit more. And with that,
Are there suggestions for how we fine tune it is what I'm asking?
Ron, are you able to send an updated draft based encapsulating or reflecting this discussion as to the best of your ability?
Well, I don't think decisions have been made yet, right? We still need to discuss further.
Right. What I was going to
What
suggest.
edits to make?
What I was going to suggest is that we define town government here explicitly to be town government only, not including committees, not including the swim team. So that way it captures only events that are literally the town government.
I agree with Robin on that.
Well, not including swim meets.
Or swim meets then.
Yeah.
All right. So if we do that, with a definition of what we mean by town government here, adding to that, I think it's good.
so we can continue to discuss it and adjust it. It's my sense of discussion here is people are ready for it to be introduced at the next council meeting. We may or may not approve it at the next council meeting, that's fine. I like Ron, and my sense was that Ron Bolt's proposed addition to clarify, part of the definition of single-use plastics. That was added, and an exclusion to be very explicit about, we're not dealing with the swim team here. Make those two minor tweaks before we introduce it at the next council meeting, and then we can have many other modifications, and we can hear from town residents on how they might want to have it improved further. That's my opinion. Is that close enough to?
Well, I was gonna add committee dance and swim team, which is what I said originally, so it's
Right, but the idea is, but what about the diversity, equity, and inclusion? So they,
well, in other words, they are not held to the same way the swim team is not held to it. Now, I've got a feeling that the birthday equity inclusion is going to compost anyway, because I know them, but they're not held to it.
so that this is an example of further discussion that we can have at the council meeting, but my sense is the only significant concern raised has been with regards to the swim team and how.
Remember, this is
Flexibility of
basically,
policy.
remember, like I said before, all you're deciding tonight is whether you're gonna introduce something. Put it on the agenda to introduce it, which you have to vote to introduce it.
Right.
So you still have, so the only issue right now is, do three if you want to put it on the agenda next week, right, or 2 weeks. Introduce.
Yeah.
I was gonna say one way we might accomplish what you're saying is to remove committees from that third resolved. And in the second one, say resolve that the town of Somerset urges all residents and volunteer committees to embrace and commit to. So we're urging use that we're prohibiting as an excellent town government instead.
Great idea, Matt. Great idea.
That's very good. Thank you. Okay, Solomon. Okay.
Ron, do you feel comfortable? Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. You had that,
Right, and this is a perfect add-on to our present conversation, because we want the town to embrace, these changes of, of recycling and composting and single use, plastics. And I think it will take a PR event to really make it happen. And that's what I want to see, a committee of kids, of our teens, becoming, and this would be their only issue, I'm just saying this is a good one. To work on civic-minded things to make our town better. And I think when we talk about engaging the teens, I think this is a perfect way to do this. I don't have a blueprint for this. I could, brainstorm it some, but I think it should go to one of the committees and they should begin to put together a team engagement group. And I think why I think the environment committee is so perfect is because they have real issues for these kids to deal with.
Yes, the only team we have on a committee at the moment is actually equity and inclusion, and we do have a team on that committee. So it's not only environmental issues, is what I'm saying.
Maybe we need a certain group that then has tentacles into the committees, or the committees have tentacles into the team group to say, hey, here's an issue. Can you guys debate it? Can you think about it? Can you engage the town in it? And whether that's leaflets indoors or not, knocking on doors, I don't know. As I said, I don't have a blueprint, but I
think they have their own issues that they want us to know about too.
Right. So that's why it's not a single issue committee. It's a committee to engage our kids civically.
Well, I think that this is important, there are other municipalities in Montgomery County that have teen committees. So that's something that you all might want to decide to create legislatively.
Maybe that's the way to go.
Jeffrey, Debbie, just to clarify, Debbie, I think your proposal is why can we have teens join committees? Correct?
No,
And I think you.
It's not my proposal.
Oh, that's not your proposal? What is your proposal?
What I'm suggesting is that we have a group, a committee, make a group of teens, so we can engage them civically in our community. And they're not, what did you say? You said, what was you?
Yeah, what Kabir was saying, make it allowed to have teens on town committees. In fact, they are allowed to be on
That's right,
town committees
that's right.
now. And one
No, exactly. I was just wondering, what is the proposal? My question is, what is your proposal? I understood your proposal to be for teens to join committees. And I agree with Robin, we don't need to do that. They already can join committees.
I think the proposal is, should the town establish a teen committee? And if 3 of you are in favor of that idea, then you can request that the town attorney draft such legislation.
And just to clarify, a teen committee is a committee comprised of teenagers, not a committee working on teen issues, right? Okay, so you,
Whatever you want it to be. It's up to you.
and okay, because you know why I'm asking that, because given that there are committees already and that the teens can join them, as Robin pointed out, those are often the range of issues that teens are also interested in. So if there's a teen only committee, are you saying that they are to only work on teen issues?
No.
I'm just trying to understand.
Well, the community issues, and maybe, as I said, I don't have a blueprint for this. I need to flesh this out more, but is this committee could be funneling our teens to the different committees, and they can be.
Why, when they can directly join?
Well, so I think part of the thinking is that, like, if, you know, a teenager is to join one of these existing committees, you know, there's a lot of, you know, they might not want to speak up, they might, you know, feel uncomfortable or whatnot. I mean, but if they have their own committee or group of teenagers that can talk about, like, what are some things that we can do better in town, and what are some issues that are important to us, and you know, either bring it to the individual committees or bring it to the town, and just try to get them involved in something that's their own peer group, instead of trying to incorporate some teenagers into an overly, you know, saturated group of older committee members that, you know, might not be as open to different things. I don't know.
That's well, very well put, and it's giving teens a voice. And I think that we talk a lot about giving kids a voice.
By giving them the right to vote, right? That was a big discussion we had,
That was part of it.
which I understood we are not aligned on. This seems like a weird, twisted kind of compromise proposal.
It's not
When
at all.
all we can do, it's like ghettoizing teens in a committee instead of just giving them the right to vote.
You know
Why
what?
would we put them in a committee?
It's
You know?
inappropriate to bring up the whole right to vote thing and then make a joke of it. Okay, I see it in your face.
I'm not joking. I'm serious. It
You're
seems.
threatening- I'm not even gonna go there. I'm done.
I feel like we should work to give teens the right to vote. A discussion that unfortunately got paralyzed.
Be fair, this is not about the right to vote, this is about forming a committee of teens.
Yeah,
And it's useful to actually do that. I think it's a good thing for the town to have a committee of teens. The only thing I'm thinking about is, do we give them a mission like all our other?
When you have, well, if you're gonna, as the town attorney has told us, when we form committees, the appropriate way to do it is we have a mission. If we're gonna have a mission for all the other committees, we would have to for this one. Is that correct, Mr. Town Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
So you were all discussing a possible mission, which you were doing excellent legislating, in my opinion.
Right, and I thought, so I think it's a great idea. I mean, we haven't fleshed it out, but the nucleus is very healthy. And Shannon started to give a little bit more detail to it, which I think is useful. I like the idea of setting up a committee, the exact name to be determined, teen or youth, but a formal committee hopefully we can get enough individuals engaged. But it could be a resource for all of the other committees, because I think that the youth in the town bring a perspective and energy, or offer perspective and energy on all of these topics. So it'd be great if, I don't know, if the environment committee is looking, or the Parks and Recreation is looking at some parkland and they want to get some input, they can turn to the youth committee and ask for some feedback and engage them, but then we don't have to somehow expect that we'll have a certain number of token youths on each committee, which could be offered for those individuals. And anyhow, I think it's worth considering. I think we can talk about it.
What I suggest is that we have the town attorney look at what other municipalities, because this is an original entry for us. So I think, but you brought it, this was your
No, I,
advocacy. So I think that we could have the town attorney look at the language that is used in other towns where there have been successful youth committees, and we can probably ask the MML which municipalities have the most highly functioning, successful youth committees, and then look at that language and decide what you all want it.
I would also be happy to have a resource to some of the other communities that have team committees of some sort, call.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, I would be happy to
That's what I'm saying.
make those phone calls.
So
and talk to you.
you as a member of the fair municipality can call the staff there and pose all those questions
Okay,
and bring it back, and then you'll save billable hours to the town attorney.
yeah, okay.
I can send an email to MML and CCU, Councilman Burke.
I appreciate it.
Great.
To start.
All right, let me run through a little bit of that,
That's it.
okay?
And so we can discuss it in a little bit more detail, flesh it out further at the next work session. Progress. Little Falls Park discussion, park day discussion.
Yes, and Mr. Mayor, feel free to jump in and add anything if I've missed anything, but so, you all might recall last year, when Montgomery County Parks announced its plan to cut down lanes on Little Falls Parkway. The traffic committee created a survey in town to get a sense of what the feeling was among Somerset residents and whether the council should submit comments or take a stand on that. And Robin, as well as the liaison, you can also, of course, feel free to jump in, but the long and short of it was that the town was split pretty much 50-50 on the proposal. And so the committee at that time decided to take a step back and not take a stand in either way. Now Parks is holding an informal meeting in February to talk about what their longer term plans are gonna look like.
What's an information? It's not an informal meeting, it's an informational.
Reports on the study that they conducted on traffic on Falls Parkway. On the 15th of February at 7 p.m.
Sorry if I said informal, I meant
Yeah,
information.
it's an there's been a lot of misinformation coming from the Parks Department. And there has been no clarity that any county council member has been able to obtain. And we were very frustrated. All the groups that I've been working with have been very frustrated with Councilmember Friedson's office. So I reached out to Councilmember Juwan's office, who also represents us. And thanks to their involvement, and they also work with Friedson's office, that this information session is going to be held so that we can all find out directly from the Parks Department what's going on, because basically they've given all different answers on where they are, but it's supposed to be that we're in the middle of this trial and they're trying all different scenarios and then once they get the data, you know, so that they have different data and there's still further changes that are being made. So the groups that have been communicating with me want to get assurance from parks that we all will get the data so that we can comment on it, that there is going to be an engaged process before final decisions are made. Because there's been different information. Some people have heard from parks that this is the final plan.
Right.
And that's not what other, you know, I've gotten different emails from parks with different answers. So that's why we asked Juwanda's office to provide an opportunity for this hearing information session. So all these questions should be answered.
It's also,
So that's good. So the issue for all of you is, do we want to take any position now, or do we want to wait until we get more information? And so then when there was the request, so Kenwood is like, they're the leading rabble rousers against the current plan. And so they are doing some kind of survey. You know, they wanted to include us. So Elizabeth decided to put it on that private listserv. But the issue is whether we at this point want to do our own survey of our own constituents.
Well, right, well, but we did a survey already, which is there, and the town is completely split down the middle. I mean, I've never seen it closer to 50-50, and it's all
Well,
like
but that was only on a lot of other changes have been made since that survey was done.
road diet.
So I don't know if you want, so it's up to you whether you want to do another survey now.
What the traffic committee wants to do is a second survey, in fact, they do want to do that. And the idea was to let it run for a while, see if there be any movement in the residents on the attitude to the road diet. It was intended as a road diet.
But is that what, but at the last meeting of the traffic committee, is that what they were recommending another survey?
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and then, so part of the follow-up.
Because I told the chair that if they wanted to do another survey, that the council needs to bless that idea.
Let's,
Mayor Slavin and Robin, what will we ask in this survey? Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah,
I'm asking because we don't know what is being proposed yet, right, by parks? Or is the traffic committee have a view on that?
no, we don't know. That's why there's to be this information session.
But since the last survey, I don't think the road diet was going on then. I don't think we cut down the lanes.
And the survey asked them about cutting down the lanes,
Now they are cut down.
right, and that's why they want a second survey.
That's right, and that's why it makes sense.
But to respond to Councilmember Kumar's question, when the committee met last week, did they recommend a specific survey? What did they recommend? I don't know.
Yes.
What did they?
In the materials we have from Matt, it says the committee recommended a survey.
I know that, but what are the questions they recommended?
They,
I
Oh,
asked-
I don't have that with me. That's why I'm asking.
they didn't brainstorm an actual survey. They just said, we should have a survey, and then we have to, they'd have to work on that. Because things have changed since the last, we have this road diet. And those of us that are driving it know what it means now. It's different than just an ideological, we're gonna cut down the lanes.
But I think the issue is, do you want to do the survey before you know what the plan is?
That's what I'm wondering, basically, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something that they probably will wait until they know the plan before they run the survey, but a word with Elizabeth there might not be crazy, just so that.
So
I got an email just before the meeting started, and Pat Johnson over in,
From Ken.
Kenwood. She has a meeting with somebody on Parks, Kyle Lucas, I think his name. Anyway, to really talk about that, the data that they have. So I've been invited to that, so if you, Jeffrey, for Thursday. I just wanna go,
Maybe Rob wants to go too.
you guys wanna go?
Maybe so, yes, I don't know. But there's the information meeting, which they are supposed to be telling us their data on Wednesday evening.
I guess,
I think there's a sense among some people, whether it's based in reality or not, I'm sure, but the sense is that this, what was meant to be a trial run is the way that Parks is really looking to make it into its long-term solution. So the question is whether, do we get a sense now to be able to, at a meeting with Parks, say, this isn't a long-term solution, we were fine with this to gather data for you to get a better solution, but it's not an acceptable long-term solution? Or do we wait until an informational meeting and get a sense of what Parks says is their long-term solution, and then try to get a sense of what our community feels about that?
I appreciate that, Matt. A quick follow-up there, Mayor Slavin, is after the information meeting, what will be the process from Parks?
Well, I think, well, that's, I don't know, because we have to see what is the result of the information set. You know, they're different answers. I mean, the
Generically speaking, like, will they?
there's really been, okay. The problem that I think everybody agrees on is that, number one, Parks has not guaranteed that we're all gonna get the data from all the different configurations. And secondly, there's been no verification that there is gonna be an open process before before what they, we were told originally that it was gonna, and this is all a trial period. We're gonna get the data and no final decisions will be made until after there's a full open process. But since then, we've got bits of information that, just like as we mentioned, that this is the final plan and it's gonna be take it or leave it, and they're shoving it down on us. And the big problem in the room, which I feel, is that why are they making any changes before we know what the impact of the development in Willard, Westport is? To me, I personally feel they should go back to the way it was until Westport is completed, and then they can do all kind of trials.
I mean, are you proposing a submission to them that lays out this point of view jointly by the mayor's office and the council?
I'm not, until we get some verification from Parks, I don't think we should really do anything. But we also, but I do think it's valuable along the way to find out what our constituents think. Because our constituents don't necessarily have the same issues that Kenwood does.
Right.
So Brookdale and all these other places, we have our main street is Dorset Avenue. And I think that what is going on over there is going to have significant impact on the traffic on Dorset Avenue.
I agree. And I think lower. It's gonna be slammed.
And I think it's fine to do all these surveys, but we're the leaders and we have to assess all this and decide what's going to happen to our main street. Just because a few people in the town want to go use Little Falls Parkway when it's closed, doesn't mean that we can take a position. What's the impact going to be on our town, our main street?
Well, to Debbie's point. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A couple things to say on that. First of all, the idea of waiting until the West Part development is over. The first phase of the West Phase development does not actually open until 2026, and the later phases go up to 2030. So they'll be waiting a very long time before actually actually doing anything on Little Falls Parkway.
Good.
Now, I understand you may feel that way, but others don't. That was the point about the 50-50 split in the survey. And it's important to get the views of residents now. So let's get a second survey. But before we say much more, likely listen to the information that they are providing us on February 15th and come back and bring it back to the council then.
I think I'm supportive of a second survey to Debbie's point that it's no harm in surveying residents again and again. This is an issue that impacts everyone. And so there's no harm in getting the latest sort of perspective. And to Debbie's point, there's actual stuff to react to. The road has been closed or modified in a particular way and people have been living through it. So I see no harm, only benefit in that. But with the expectation that we will face new information at the information meeting and may need to go back to the town with an updated view and resurvey them. And personally, I'm with Jeffrey that often the sort of county processes I feel are not data driven and are often sort of the research is not, the process is not transparent.
Right.
It's often a process issue and it's particularly painful because they don't live often directly the consequences. We live directly the consequences.
Right.
So the burden of proof is on them to try and be as transparent and inclusive as possible. And procedurally, they always leave a lot to be decided.
That's why all of you, so I was sort of tongue in cheek about my view, because I know that it's not gonna happen, it's gonna wait until 2030. But I just want, the reason why I want in particular for this to be on the agenda was that I'm glad that all 5 of you are so engaged in this. And I hope you will attend the meeting and get the answers to the questions that you need before you decide on what we're gonna do in our town. I think surveys are completely valuable and you want to listen to your constituents.
I agree. I just think that, will someone be able to kind of read over the survey questions before they go out? Because I thought that the last survey was kind of hard to, it was very, like, do you like, cars driving and upsetting kids, or, it was kind of like skewed.
Well, that's why when, okay, this is exactly why when Elizabeth came to me and I think Debbie, and she wanted to put out a survey right away, I said, and I called her and I said, this really needs to be up to the council. So I'm glad that you brought that point up, because I really think if you do another survey, it should be a survey that the 5 of you approve.
Yeah, and I think it should be really just any sort, just kind of a very broad survey instead of, because a lot of people, I didn't even really understand, some of the aspects of it, of what they were even doing. So like maybe a little bit of information first.
I think this is a survey that you all should approve.
By the way, the council did approve the first survey. I remember taking it to the council, and Jeffrey, you said, I don't think surveys need to be taken to the council at that time.
I don't remember reading
Well,
it.
at that time, I remember this whole issue about whether, like, we had the issue with the stormwater committee, right? That they wanted to do their survey and and I think at the time that it was appropriate for the traffic committee to do that survey, but things have changed since then, and now you're all engaged in it, and I think that if you're going to eventually take it, that was a survey so that the traffic committee can take a position. Now it's a survey so you all can take a position on this.
Well, shall I let Elizabeth?
Can we sum up where we are on this topic? I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the time. Are we saying?
Well, I'm asking a question of council.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Shall I ask the committee that, or tell the committee that the council wants to review the questions on the survey before it goes out this time?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and was it wait until after this informational meeting or no need to wait until then?
I know it's very not going to have the information, so that's gonna happen by then. I will talk to Elizabeth, I'll email her, separately. So, she knows not to do it without having the council engaged.
Excellent, great. Thank you. Discussion important topic. The racial covenants.
This is another, maybe even more so, one that's just sort of an update, and it's been a topic that's bubbled up in town a little bit. Mayor Slavin has been working with his counterpart in Washington that is looking at ways that municipalities in Montgomery County might expunge racial covenants en masse or at least facilitate. Did you say that? Their yes. So I included Mayor as a primer. Maryland has legislation that allows residents to remove racial covenants from their land deeds free of cost. So I included that. And then additional information that Washington Grove is looking at. And also just added that my understanding from a recent NML luncheon meeting was that there is expected to be legislation that is introduced at this next session that would directly address this and allow municipalities to expunge these en masse. I will let Councilmember Barr explain, because he brought up the point himself, but he had raised the issue as well, though, that we might want to be mindful to not just erase it and have it be forgotten. So there's no actual action, I don't think, that the council needs to consider in this. But it's just sort of an update.
But it's also what do we want to do? Do we want to support the legislation, but on that, Councilor Paul.
Yeah, right. First of all, I have to report our scoop on this, which is that the Town Journal reported the findings by the History and Archives Committee and the Inclusion Committee about the covenants, and particularly about the Burgo land covenant, a month before the Washington Post brought it round Act up again. So the Town Journal is still.
That's why we had invest.
The issue there is that all of the land of the Burgo land had a covenant on it when it was sold. This was before the houses were built. It strikes me as the only way that the covenant can be removed is by town action in that case, rather than individual resident action. I do not know whether individual homes have covenants on them. They may well not have covenants on them. I do know a whole tract has a covenant on it by virtue of that sale.
Well, maybe our town attorney can answer that here first.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, what properties do and do not have the covenants in the town.
And what about the question about whether with the Burgo tract, whether the town has the power to? Is that your question?
The sale, the sale in, I think, 1946 had a covenant on it, and it's the sale of all of the land that is now New Somerset, from Essex Avenue down to the border. All of that was that sale had a covenant on it, which was the report from Pat Barry and the Post as well. And so the question is, how do we fix that? We can't erase it, that is history, but we can say, put a new language on it that says we no longer discriminate, or whatever we want to say. But I think the town has to do it. I don't think individual residents can do it because it was all of that land in one sale.
Can I clarify something quickly? We are talking about the original deeds that had racial covenants, the land deeds, which we all know is now well-documented history. And there are 2-3 ideas on the table is what I've heard. One is there's some legislation being proposed statewide. Is that right, Jeffrey? That is to expunge or to update these deeds or to expunge the sort of the racial covenants from these deeds or update these deeds. So that's one piece. Second piece is our own town, the deeds that we can potentially investigate and update and expunge this language. And then the third is the Bergdahl tract and the deeds associated with that, and to what extent we can expunge and update those deeds. Is that correct? Those are 3 things that we are discussing. Sorry, I'm not in the room, so it's hard for me.
We're just sort of discussing it in general, but those are 3 possible things that we could do.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm fully in support of all of them. I think the first one, if we can as a town support this legislation, I think it would be meaningful. I haven't looked at it closely, so with that caveat, but I think on the whole, this is extremely important. Professionally, in my own work, we are investigating sort of in sort of the financial sector, how these deeds have impacted home ownership over time and where people have ended up. And so there's a whole effort in the industry to do this. So I'm fully in support of that. I think on the second one, to the extent we can control it, I fully support that. And I think if we can educate residents to investigate on their own deeds, fully support that. I think the third one seems tricky because that sale was done. So I'm a little unclear how that would work. But fully support that. I don't know what others think of this.
So we wait on the legislation that's pending, which would give municipalities power to move on this. Is that the better strategy?
I think so.
I think so as well, because right now the process provides that the owner of property or an association charged with enforcing the covenant can go through the process. And you have to identify the original deed. You have to have the authority to enforce the covenant under that original deed. And then you propose what language to be stricken. So then in the future, if someone tries to pull that exact deed from land records, what they will pull will be an expunged version. But I think there's a limitation in the law right now because I think they had HOAs and similar community associations in mind that expressly enforce covenants and not municipalities. We as a town don't enforce covenants of record that apply to private parcels. I had thought there might be a tricky way, or not tricky, clever way we could do it by adopting a law to say the town may enforce covenants. But then there's some unintended consequences because there might be covenants that say no sheds in this yard, for example, that we might not want to enforce. But I didn't know that there was other legislation down the road, so I think that would probably be the best bet. However, the town can expunge any language that exists in the title history for the parcels that it owns.
That we should do immediately.
That's a great idea.
Right. Yeah, just a note, and this is something Pat Barry said, which is that we can't erase history. So that the original deeds of the property or of the land will still be there, even if we put a replacement deed on there that removes the covenants, so that both pieces will be there when someone looks at it, the original racial deed.
I don't know that that's correct.
That is correct.
But Ron just said that you can expunge that.
No, I don't think you can.
Well, I don't know how knowledgeable Pat Barry is about it.
I mean, to the point that we expunge a language, but how do we not sort of acknowledge this violent history? I think that can be done in many ways, right? I mean, there could be a town journal article that says, look, we've taken this action, this is how it was, we all know this history. Moving forward, this is not who our town is and what our town is. And
Yeah, well, I think that's something that the committee is gonna recommend. Isn't that part of what they're
if they haven't, they should recommend.
I think the Equity Inclusion Committee, and this all goes with welcome letter we've been talking about for years, that we need to do some PR around here to let potential future residents know that we are welcoming to all people. I mean, that's really the bottom line. That's what you're talking about.
That is an important impact of this is that
there are reasons why we are basically a segregated town.
Well, I was thinking that perhaps if we took that first step and did go through the process of expunging covenants that exist on town property, then we also then have a resource that we can provide to residents who fall under that area as well to say, here's draft language you can use. Of course, it's no longer a covenant that is legally enforceable, but you might have reference within your deed to previous covenants that were promoting segregation within our community, and it's beneficial if you take these steps.
I think that would do an incredible amount of PR for the town if we did that.
Okay, so we'll be asking the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to prepare that language, and then Matt, you would be working with Ron to actually take the steps.
Yeah, I can follow up with the diversity, equity, inclusion, and history and archives committees, and then from there follow up with Ron about the actual legal steps we need to take in order to get the ball rolling on that.
That's great, Matt.
And I'll see if I can pin down whether or not the original deed is still available. Based on what I read, I thought not, because like when a criminal record is expunged, it's no longer a public record that can be located.
Right, but
It would be really unfortunate if it was still there and accessible by the public.
Well, please do check. I mean, I can see the logic of why it should still be there, because that is the historical record.
that's like the argument for statute.
But that's for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to look at. Is there a way that in the language we want to introduce, we capture the historical record?
And I think it's
And if there's legislation pending, then I think we should ask that the state set up the additional process to eliminate it entirely, so it's not accessible, just like an expunged criminal record.
Yeah, do we need to do something about this pending legislation? Do we
Can give
like to
comments.
write provide comments or provide support?
Yeah, we definitely should.
Okay, that would be great. I don't know who.
The reason why we have to do the reason why I wanted this to be on the agenda is because we need to be very proactive here, because we got terrible negative publicity by being on the front page of the Washington Post with our town's name on there. And let's not forget how negative that was to people, because they don't read the article, they just see racial covenants, they see a picture of our town entrance on there. So that was really unfortunate, because I got a lot of negative feedback about that.
Well, it is the dark and true history of our
Yeah,
town.
right.
And so
But they could put
sorry,
any
Shannon,
something.
could
They
Shannon
could,
say that again? I couldn't hear. I'm so sorry.
I said that there are other areas, like they just chose to use Somerset.
Yeah.
The article was solely.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
That's-
If we just have an entrance, we have.
They could have had a Chevy Chase.
They could have done the building with Drummond.
They could have had Drummond, they could. Councilmember, they could have had many different, instead of
That
forcing.
is it. I mean, let alone Newland's, massive property on Chevy Chase Circle never makes it in the Washington Post article.
Is there interest and support in having the council and the mayor submit a letter to, I guess, our state representatives to support this legislation?
Yeah, but
You should send a letter, an editorial to the Washington Post.
we already did.
If they print it?
We have to follow up with
Okay,
that. Anyway.
okay, thank you, moving on. Item
Could we-
7.
Sorry, could we quickly recap what we are agreeing to do? So we are saying we will do what? Steve, you are the convener here. Can you recap for us?
Right, so that is going to work with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and the Historical Records Committee, Archives Committee to develop language and that we can put into an updated or revised charters, and then that will work with Ron to try and take the administrative or legal steps to make the changes for town property.
Oh, that was step one, and then we are saying we will submit a letter.
And then a letter.
The mayor,
Legislation.
the mayor and I can draft a letter for consideration at the next council meeting to submit to our state delegation. In favor of legislation that would allow municipalities to expunge these types of covenants on them.
And the third piece is that as part of the process, the learnings you have from the process, Matt and Ron, we would share with residents if they want to take those actions on their own implicated properties. Is that correct? That's the third piece. Robin, is there anything you wanted that's missing here?
No, I mean, it's, the other point was that we shouldn't take further action ourselves until the legislation has passed, and we should write a letter to our legislators encouraging the legislation.
Great.
Well, wait, so just to clarify, is Councilmember Barr saying we should not take steps to remove the covenants from the town-owned properties
Oh,
until?
no, we can go ahead and do it on our own property. The issue is whether the town can take action beyond that and wait for the legislation.
Which is a good text.
Well, whoever put this item on the agenda, thank you so much. I think it's super important.
Yep, yes, absolutely. For many reasons. AV enhancement.
Sure, I included kind of a short little memo to go over where we are, so in the interest of trying to get us back on track, I won't rehash what is in front of you. The long and short of it is that Linda and I, after getting feedback, and Councilmember Kumar and Ron can probably attest to it tonight, of bad acoustics, bad sound during these hybrid meetings.
Can you repeat that, Matt?
Right, exactly.
Just kidding.
That's a good one.
If we want to continue to offer this, then we need to make the investment to do it right. We did budget money in our fiscal year budget to do improvements at the town hall. And we have a proposal from a company that we met with, we really liked, that seemed like they could do a good job with us, and it fits within the budget. And so we're asking if we can sign off on a contract with them and get that work done.
Do you need council involvement given it's already in the budget?
It was a large enough amount that I felt I want to get feedback on it.
No, okay. Tonight he's explaining the contract and it's provided for in the budget, but the council has to approve the contract. Again,
Oh, good point, good point.
tonight is just to save time at the, hopefully at the meeting, so that you all can ask your questions. And then if they're answered, we can put it on the consent.
My desire is to put this on the consent agenda.
Yeah, the only question I have, Matt, my good answer is now was the camera, 900 pixel camera, why are they selling as a camera?
The camera would be able to pan the room so that we can more easily capture when we get other speakers and focus better on the entire council, so we would get a better view of.
Like on a tripod or?
It is on a tripod and not on a tripod, actually, it goes with the TV. But it
Moves?
moves.
It's voice activated, so like, if I'm talking, it points to me, then Robin starts to talk, and it goes around to him.
I believe, well, the
Does
way
it zoom in the louder you talk?
the way that he described it to me was that it was just a better parabolic camera. So if you're more to this, it doesn't have to move across the room, but that it captures all the way across the room.
All right.
So the whole room will be captured instead of us trying to fit in a little spot, and when, as I said, speakers, presenters talk, that they'll be captured in camera.
It's reasonable investment.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I can't judge if it's pricey or not. I think, so I leave it to you to determine, if you've gotten different quotes or if some comparisons, just to be, fiscally sensitive. The one thing I would say the biggest impact we can have is just improving the audio. So the audio alone will go a very long way.
That's the bulk of it, is to stop the echoing and to get a better microphone system and speaker systems for outside as well, because that's been brought up at 4th of July and other events as well.
Okay, so it goes beyond it. Okay, awesome.
Yes,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, then the price makes sense
It's gonna be first class.
They've looked at our roof and said that they.
for now.
We lose a lot of sound up there, it's the issue.
Yes.
For the year. So
Yes.
technology comes out.
Yes, they actually said it wasn't all that complicated, and they dealt with rooms that
All
are
right.
equally challenging.
Okay, consent agenda.
Great.
Item 8, in-person attendance. This is gets to the question of who we want to show up in person for formal council meetings
Given the hearings.
and hearings, hearings.
So the reason why this came up and we put it on here is because. In order to have highly effective administrative hearings, we really should have all the people here. So we mentioned to the town attorney that it's okay if he isn't here in person for tonight, or if there are council meetings when there are no administrative hearings, which are so like court cases. But I feel that we should have all of the personnel here in person, including our
Arborist and town engineer.
arborist and town engineer. So I just wanted to get the sense of the council, and it's the same way I've urged all of you, that I understand your schedules, and if you might not be able to attend a council meeting or a work session in person, but I do think that when it comes to an administrative hearing, when you're making a decision on a permit, that it's more effective if you're here. That's all I'm saying. And to get your sense.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I know that I am going to have to be on Zoom from New Zealand, actually, on the April 3rd meeting.
Well, I understand from time to time where it's easier, but I'm talking about as a policy in general.
Think that I don't know if like the Zooms tend to encourage more participation, which I think is good, but at the same time, like the meetings can go a very long time. You know, I like that people, you know, would have to show up here to have a little skin in the game and.
I'm talking about, I'm only talking about for hearings on, I'm not talking about anything else. That I understand. But I think that when there's a hearing, that all the players should be here.
Yeah, I agree.
The town attorney, the arborist, the building, the engineer, and all of us. Because I mean, those are like being in court. And
Yeah.
And I'm sure that during the pandemic, a lot of judges, with all the Zooms, and everything, it created a lot of problems and longer here, and I think it creates longer hearings.
Yeah.
And it's sort of embarrassing when we have these technical problems that we can't, it's not really our fault, but it's sort of embarrassing. But if everybody's here, it wouldn't be a problem.
I agree.
I agree too, Jeffrey. To clarify, you're saying town staff at the hearings must be present in person. So it's specifically for hearings and it's specifically town staff only, right? Like including the engineer, Ron.
Yeah.
Others. And then just two questions on that front. It says in the documents we got that there will be a cost implication, but were we doing that before the pandemic? We were paying town staff to be present in person.
Because we pay them for their travel time.
We used to pay that prior to the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's a standard operating procedure for an attorney or a consultant.
That's fine.
It's just like with a plumber, the same with the plumber.
So,
Why do you-
no. I'm not questioning. I'm just clarifying.
Why do you think that they charge more to come to Somerset? Because.
It's fine. It's fine. The second question, this quick second question I have is, I think that, there can be reasons where people might struggle to come in person. For instance, today, I struggle to come in person. What I think I would say is that what would go a long way that is important and professional is to be on video and to have good audio. I think that's extremely critical. So if there are instances where town staff cannot be present in person for a variety of personal reasons, I think they need to be visible and they need to be heard.
I understand, but I'm talking about, I'm only talking about hearings. I'm not talking about, like tonight, the technology is so working, it's fine that you're not here. And we're not holding a hearing.
But if it's a hearing, let's say if it's a hearing and the town arborist cannot make it in person, and so they, as long as they can show up with video and audio, I would be comfortable with that. Yeah.
I understand that from time to time, there, like he travels sometimes, but I'm talking about it as a policy. And it's not like we're passing, we're just discussing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm saying just an added thing is think about also making sure that if they cannot show up, they are in video and audio.
I understand, that's how we operate now. I'm just saying that I want to get a sense of the council that you agree that we instruct all these players in a hearing, that we advise them to be present. That's all I'm saying. I understand exceptions.
I agree with you on all points, but I would like to say that we all need to be here too. I know it's a hard night for you to come to Bureau, but it's harder having you on screen than having you here.
Yeah.
And it's better to have you on screen than not have you at all.
Right.
It's like you're going to New Zealand, we're gonna go with you. We'll have our meeting in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
yeah, I just think it's hard. I think we all need to be
Your travel
here,
costs, yeah. Cover your travel. Ron.
anyway, yeah.
Great. Item 9, sidewalk repairs.
Yes,
Ask Matt for an update on this, especially since we haven't fully used the budget in previous years.
yeah, so we did budget $50,000 for sidewalk repairs in this year's budget. I have reached out to A.B. Veers, who has done some of our just regular maintenance work outside of large scale projects. To do a walkthrough in the next couple of weeks and hopefully to then schedule some repairs in the spring to take care of some of our biggest tripping hazard areas throughout town and the sidewalks. We've also done some grinding down of the sidewalks, so we'll also look for opportunities where we don't need to fully replace the concrete slabs, but might be able to grind them down. Beyond that, we'll also be doing a broader look at our sidewalk infrastructure as part of the roadways master plan and looking at bringing things into ADA compliance, for example, and if there are any bigger changes aside from just tripping hazards that we're looking at now. Another thing we might look at, again, we had looked at this in previous years, but around trees, some of the spongier surface instead of sidewalks. So we might look at that as an option in those areas too. But the long and short of it, again, is that I think this spring we'll do repairs on areas that need to be fixed for tripping hazards. Longer term, we'll look at, as part of our roadways master plan, incorporating, making an overall better sidewalk infrastructure throughout town.
Rick, take that up to any questions?
Yeah, there was a specific equity inclusion recommendation around and budget request for making the sidewalk crossing on the Cumberland Surrey intersection ADA compliant, which it's not at the moment.
Yes.
Is that on the agenda?
Yes, that will be one of the areas that we look at when we're doing the walkthrough.
All right.
I know that that's been looked at previously as well, so yes, to answer your question, yes.
Right.
One quick thing, Matt, thank you so much for that update. I walked through maybe half the town with Marnie, ex-council member Marnie Shaw. I believe she fell about a month ago and had a pretty bad bruising. And what I'll report from that is that you're right, Matt, there are a number of areas like on Surrey where you've done a great job of sort of minimizing the sharp edges where there's been that the root system has pushed up the sidewalk. And so you see the impact of that work. Most of the areas we identified, and I owe you that list, Matt, sorry, I have just been busy, is areas where the root system has pushed up. And then there's at least a half a foot or more of a gap from the strip of land that is closest to the street. So from the sidewalk, and so that it becomes a big drop. And if you're not sure-footed or it's late at night or you're walking your dog and you're not paying attention, it's very easy to trip. And so most of those actually are not concrete work. They just can be resawed very easily, just to raise those beds so they are at the same level as the sidewalk. And so as I think you already have that on your mind, but I can just share that list. So when you guys do your assessment, you can just kind of triangulate.
Yeah, I'll try to be mindful of that, but if you send it over to me, that would be great. That probably can be done, if not at least supplemented by our maintenance staff, just filling in with, as you said, sodding and dirt.
Yeah, but it was great to actually, because I have not really focused, just for the benefits of fellow council members, it was great to see where work has happened and what a positive impact it has had when we've sort of smoothened the edges, and so it was nice to see that.
Thank you, Greer. That's a good point about the edges of the sidewalk. I've always looked at where the sidewalk pieces connect to the next sidewalk piece, but it's the bigger picture. So that was very useful.
And then we also have people that are complaining about places where the curb is broken. kind of be dangerous.
Which was part of the big plan. Okay, number 10, Iowa Mayor.
Okay, does everybody know about the Maryland Municipal League of Iowa Mayor as a contest for fourth graders? So before the pandemic, so this is a contest for the entire state, right? But before some years ago, before the pandemic, we would hold the contest also at Somerset Elementary School. And we had to have a buy-in for the principal, and so they would, all the fourth graders there would participate, and we would judge. The state, the league judges picks winners from each region, and everybody's entered in that contest. But then we would get the essays we would get the state would give us all the essays that came from Somerset Elementary. And then we would judge them ourselves and give a winner. I think Councilmember Kumar's son was a winner. That's when we first met him. So the question is, do we want to do that again?
Yeah.
Yes.
And who is going to lead the judges? And
I'm different. Why are you looking at me?
who is going
There's lots of
to?
people around this
The
table.
new youth committee.
The youth leaders.
Lead what judges?
The judges were. Well, the judges have to read the essays and pick a winner.
Oh,
I'll leave the charge.
And
Do you want to lead the charge?
they also suggest sometime in February or March that we have an official either elected or staff.
Yeah, we have to
Go
go
visit the-
Yeah, we have to go visit them and tell them all about the contest, get them excited about it. So I want to know if at least two of you will join me, and then you can get a committee together to read, you don't. have to read it.
I'll help. I'm happy to.
Do it. Oh, excellent. Okay, good. But now we have to get to see if the school, if the principal, and if the.
We can just reach out to, either Julianne or Kate Julian.
But it has to be the fourth grade teacher section.
This is principal, yeah, but I think that Kate might have a first grader. We can reach out to her. She's like very involved.
Well, I understand, but the teacher has to. They have to decide whether it'll fit into their.
No, the decision, and it tells the teacher what
Okay,
they're
great.
going to
Okay, excellent.
do. Okay, I think that's the way they,
Okay, good.
it rolls.
Okay, but I just wanted to see if there was interest. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you're
This
interested.
is fun, I'm gonna go talk to the fourth
Okay, good,
graders.
yeah,
You kidding?
It's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
I think it's awesome. I'm glad we're doing it.
Parents to vote, the 16-year-old vote.
Right, yeah, absolutely, I'll be right in there.
Ground, thank you. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say to Jeffrey that my son's essay was, if I was the mayor, I would set up a community center that would bring people of all ages together. That was the big statement he says. And he reminds me every day that the community center still doesn't exist. So,
Okay.
we can work on that, guys. We can make
Talk to them
it
about tax.
someday.
Well,
Someday.
one day you'll be the mayor. One day you'll be the mayor.
One day you'll be the mayor. You'll have to work.
When he comes back from college and moves in with you, because he can't afford to buy a house. in Somerset.
Right.
And
I
then
know
you
that
have-
Debbie and Shannon signed up, but I'd be also happy to help if there's need. for
Yeah,
it.
Shannon's daughter might be the next mayor.
She's only in second grade.
Coming.
2 years. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night. Good stuff.
Yeah.